I'm not gonna lie, this might be one of the hardest videos to make, and not for the reasons that would be obvious. I don't need to change your opinion, or look for little details that weren't noticed. Actually, it's the opposite problem. Not only have many of you guessed the position of John, but due to John being one of the main characters, there are a lot of little details that matter a whole lot. But it would take me forever to explain it properly, and it would also, kind of be boring. So, let's talk about the man who abandoned the throne. Let's talk about John. John's story begins in New Boston. Before John went to Wellston, before he was a high tier, before he abandoned the hierarchy, John was at the bottom of the food chain. According to Eisen, while I was researching him, I looked through his middle and grade school records as well. Back then, his ability always hovered around 1, with no signs of growth. He was pretty much a crippled. While John was at the bottom of the food chain, it didn't mean he didn't have friends. He had some friends. He had his friend Adrian, an extremely loyal and close friend to John, and Claire, a seemingly gracious and trusting student. However, Claire is the first piece to John's very, very confusing life puzzle. Claire becoming friends with John wasn't because of friendship. I overheard her talking to the Jack. She said the only reason why she approached you that day was because she had a vision long before of you climbing to the top. And because you were so weak and isolated at the time, she wanted to get to you first. That's the only way you trust and rely on her. Of course, John didn't believe his very close friend, but Adrian here is telling the truth. Claire gathered students to fight John, and this didn't end well for the students. Finally, John knocks Claire out right after she calls him monster. Words that are etched into John's mind for the rest of the series of Unordinary. After this, massacre, John is expelled and placed into the loving care of Keon and his readjustment classes for 3 months, where Keon kind of tears into John's personality, his actions, and his fate. Your biggest wish growing up was to become powerful, wasn't it? Become strong so that no one can mess with you anymore. Just like the elite and the high tiers. Yes, but the problem here is that your wish came true. So now you think you can do whatever you want, right? What you don't understand is that everyone in society has a role to fulfill. You're lost, mindlessly throwing power around. You haven't got a clue what to do. You have absolutely no control. That's why all late bloomers, like you, are doomed to fail. When Keon shows John what he's done, it's obvious he feels bad. But John needs to pretend he's strong. He needs to cover up his insecurities. He needs to pretend he's not only physically strong, but emotionally strong as well. That's why he keeps on shutting his eyes when he's forced to see the consequences of his actions. Even going into his mind and replaying his memories of being cold and abusive to his friends when they just wanted to calm him the heck down. 3 months of this. 3 months of Keon slowly breaking him down until he's reduced to this. Look at his eyes. It's cold and dead and empty. We see him fall into a state of depression, staying in bed for a week, regretting his actions, feeling like, a monster, thinking he's worthless, that everything he's done and will do means nothing. I'm sure we've all felt like this. Like we can't accomplish anything worthwhile. But John's dad helps John change his tune. It's very possible that John's dad wanted John to realize that his powers can be used for good, to help people. But John gets something else out of the story. 2 things, actually. The first thing we get is from a lie detector. I have no intention of becoming a superhero, if that's what you're worried about. The thought never even crossed my mind. I didn't reread the book because I wanted to be like the main character or anything. I used the book as reassurance. Those currently in power are always working better in this world for the rest of us. Reading it made me feel safe. While he did this, it is a mix of that and something else. A state of worthlessness. John felt worthless after that class, after those readjustment classes. But after reading the book, he feels like he's worthwhile. He feels like he can actually do something. Even if it's not being a superhero, even if it's not being a hero, being a good person, he still changes for the better. He hangs out with his dad, eventually applying to Wellston, starting a new chapter in his life. God, that was one page and I haven't talked about Wellston. We all know John's story, so forgive me if I brush aside any major details, because there's nearly 155 chapters and John is basically in every single one of them. Let's start at the beginning of the webtoon. With this moment, John going to the bathroom. In his way, we have Zeke bullying Terrence, a character who deserves a video for himself, but what we see is interesting. John intervenes. He stops Zeke from hurting Terrence anymore. Sure, it may be nothing, but it's a good standard to what John starts out as. He's someone who helps people when they need it. He even might get extremely injured, but he still helps. However, this changes. We see John yet again save another weaker student, but not because he wanted to help someone, but because he wanted to beat someone down, due to the death pool thing for superheroes. And forgive me for my censoring, but I don't like swearing. You think this is funny? There are people dying out there trying to save your butts, and the only thing you can think to do is take satisfaction in stepping on people weaker than you? How pathetic. You're a disgrace to society. Finally snapping out of it when he remembers his past. Running away, trying to remember that he wanted to be better. That he didn't want to be a monster. However, that changes. After Arlo's situation, we'll get to that, we see this scenario again. We see someone weak getting bullied by someone stronger. And what does John do this time? Nothing. We just see him walk away. By this time, Seraphina has been attacked and lost her powers. John has been ambushed by Arlo and many of the elite tiers. John has realized that he shouldn't get involved with anyone. He just wants to live his life the way he wants to, ignoring the hierarchy and being friends with Seraphina. Which leads us into our next topic, John's trust, an actually important aspect of John's character. In fact, it's more lack of trust. John doesn't trust or like anyone. There is the one exception, but he even hates himself. Self-loathing is a very integral part to John. He doesn't like what he used to be. He constantly has to stop himself when he remembers what he's done. When he remembers that word, monster. John doesn't like people, even the low tiers, the people he should like. The people who get beaten down just as much as he does. He isn't exactly friendly towards them. Yeah, we know John. But he kinda gives off bad vibes. I mean, we've tried being friendly with him before. But he kinda just ignores us. Hey, don't forget the way he looks at us too. It's really condescending. Like he thinks he's better than us because he's friends with the great Seraphina. We're really not fans of him. That's John with low tiers, and he's worse with high tiers. During Seraphina's suspension, we have John slowly being broken by Arlo. And when he comes home, he kinda goes ham on this punching bag. Worthless. They're all worthless. Those weaklings with no backbone, who can't stand up for themselves. Those who call themselves elites, use their powers for the most petty things. Those who think that just because they have a little bit of power, they can do whatever they want. Even the one person I believed in. Everyone is worthless. Eventually, remembering Seraphina and calming down. Seraphina is John's only lifeline in his school, his only saving grace, the only one he can trust. John has been scarred for life. He doesn't want to trust anyone anymore. After Claire, he had difficulty trusting anyone. He tries again with Arlo, and that completely shatters any trust John will have in anyone anymore. We see Eisen and Blake help John up to his room after getting beaten up, and remembering all those people who broke his trust, he kind of confronts them. Enough, Eisen. What do you want? I'm asking what your motive is. What, you think I don't remember? That time you forced me into an interview and crushed my wrist? What's with the sudden switch? Humph. Unintentional? Then why were you smiling the entire time? I won't fall for it. Why are you getting involved with me? You want to bring me to some secluded location? And beat me into submission again? Is that hilarious to you people? I don't want your help. Get out. Isn't this kind of depressing? Imagine helping someone and the first thing they ask is what your motive is. What do you want? John's trust is so far gone that even when someone helps him, he wants to know why. Why they want to help him. What they're getting out of this. I find I won't fall for it especially heartbreaking. He's tried so hard to do the right thing and it's backfired so many times. He's tried to stay down and mind his own business and they target him. He tries to be nice to Arlo and we all know how that goes. John tries his hardest to do what he thinks is right, but it all backfires. But John knows his limits. He understands what happens to him and how to maintain what he needs to maintain. However, he wasn't expecting Serafina to be the problem. Notice when Joker starts to come out. First, we get Jesus, or Tuesday upside down, when Serafina gets beaten up. Why the Shadow King comes out? Because Serafina was abducted. Finally, the Joker comes out because John wants to create a place where Serafina, the only person he cares about, can live in peace, where she doesn't need to worry about people beating her up, where the hierarchy isn't a reason to beat someone up. I'll be honest, there's a lot more to John's character, like how he still is shaken up by Keon, how he treats people who are supposed to be his partner, like Cecile. However, John's character really boils down to his trust, and the lack of trust he puts in everyone and everything, and the only trust he puts in Serafina. I made a John video a while ago, and thanks to probably all of you watching, it's become my most viewed video, with nearly 30,000 views. Which, by the way, thank you so much for that. But the video is titled, Is John the Villain or the Victim? Now, I'll be honest, the title wasn't the argument I wanted to make. It was more if we should be cheering for John. Should we want him to brutally beat down all the royals? Because, villains can be victims, and victims can be villains. They're not mutually exclusive. However, many of you sided with John, which wasn't that surprising. A handful of you sided against John, which actually was really surprising. But many of you generally agreed that he was in both sides. He was the anti-hero. He was a neutral party. That his actions, while terrible, were understandable. He's suffered a lot, and it's only natural that he would lash out. Which is why I'm putting John into chaotic neutral. The chaotic part I don't need to explain. He literally destroys the hierarchy, the authority. That is basically as chaotic as someone could get. It's more the neutral part I need to explain. John shows very little mercy for the people he challenges. However, can we call him evil for giving people what they gave him? John literally mentions this with his talk with Serafina. Okay, sure, but whatever Joker's done so far isn't anything new. Not for us anyways. We've all been publicly beaten before. We've been sent to the infirmary countless times, and we don't always know who our attackers are either. It sucks, but he's just doing what everyone else has been doing. Is that an excuse to do terrible things? Yeah, kinda. But it's a standard that the school and the hierarchy has set. Remember, our morals and the morals of the world of Unordinary are different. It's more than being nice or not, or treating people with respect or not. There's complicated layers to what is the normal, and that is the normal. That's why he belongs in chaotic neutral. And I'm sure many of you will agree with that stance. Which is interesting about John. He didn't start out in chaotic neutral. I don't know where he would have started out, but he slowly shifted into a more evil position. A more merciless one. Anyways, next week is a character multiple people have asked since Arlo's video. Next time we will be ending it off with Serafina. But like always, thank you for watching.